Now I have a question.
I have a question. Are you ready to learn? What up? It's Snowflake. I'm going to show you today how to make an audience activity billboard. And what do I mean by that? Basically a motion template, a slide that brings text up onto the screen so that we can put a question that the presenter asks into visual form. So I'm going to show you an example of this first. The speaker asked a question to the audience, wants them to write stuff down and participate, but I'm going to put his question in text form with some background music on the screen, and I did this with motion. So here's what it looks like.
To add that value, take a few moments and journal on that.
And that goes on for about 15 seconds, and then we come over here and comes back, and his audio comes back up.
Okay, we'll pause you there.
And then sooner or later that question.
Important question, yes or no?
Good. So I'm going to show you how exactly I did that. So over here, he asked another question, and I've already written down what that question is. And what we're going to do is we're going to go open up our motion file. So in my assets folder and in my motion folder and in the questions folder, I've got all these different questions that I've already done, but I'm going to create a new one. First, I'm going to duplicate this. I'm going to duplicate this question. This is going to be question 5. I'm going to open it up in motion. And I'll show you what I've done in the motion project file so you can just sort of see for yourself how I've created this. But basically I had a logo, and I took this logo and I put it at the bottom of the screen. Sometimes I put it in the middle, maybe blur it out a bit, but for this one I just left it right there. Then there's a text box, and I've chosen a font, and I've put the text box, I've centered it up, it's in the middle of the screen, and then there's just like a white background, and there's a little bit of a gradient there, barely noticeable. So the last thing I did with the text is I add a little motion to it so that it all kind of builds in on the screen, and it just gives it a little bit more flavor. You can do that in your library, behaviors, and text sequence, and there's a bunch of them in here. I used one that's called Blast In. You want to see that over here, right? Cool. So, what are we going to do here? Well, I'm going to go look at what what I wrote down here on this question. And he asks, what would you have to do to serve? So we're going to go over here. What would you have to do to serve a higher aspiration, ambition, or aesthetic? That's a mouthful. A higher aspiration, ambition, or aesthetic. Too big. We're going to go down another line. Aesthetic. In your marketplace that would create more value. In your marketplace that would create more value. Boom! Okay, so one thing we always want to make certain is that we've spelled everything correctly. So what I do is I copy the text here. That was not intended. Copy the text here and go into my text edit. I'm going to make this pretty big, and we're going to paste it in there. Now, if there was any errors in my spelling, for instance, if this was spelled incorrectly, text edit apparently automatically fixes it for you. But if there was an error, it would actually come with this red line. Then we could, right-click it or whatever, and I don't know. I guess you can do this and create, right, and change it. But you want to do this just to make sure that all your spelling is correct. Okay, so now that we've got this in here, it looks okay. I try to make sure that it's proportional on the, here, and it's pretty close. I mean, it's got some bigger words in there, so it might be a little more difficult to do that, but that looks good. So we're going to save it and we're going to export it. And this just takes, I don't know, 20 seconds to export. We're going to save it over here and export it. Now, you can use the actual motion file in Final Cut Pro. I prefer to export it as a QuickTime and then use the QuickTime, because when you have the QuickTime, it saves all of your font that you use, the graphic, everything is in there, so that if at a later time you want to come back and use it, you can still do that because everything is in that QuickTime as opposed to everything being connected to that motion file. And if things are disconnected from that motion file, then you're going to have problems. So I've saved that. I'm going to close out of this, go back to Final Cut Pro. And now I'm going to drag in this question and I'm going to put it in my bin over here that I have made for this, which is in my assets bin, my motion bin, my questions bin, and I'm just going to put it right in there. Okay. Now I'm going to come over here. I've already timed this out perfectly where he stops talking.
Take a few moments to brainstorm.
And we're going to drop it in right here. We're going to open it up in our viewer, and we're going to insert it, not overwrite it, but insert it into this area. Now, I like to have it on screen for about 15 seconds. So what I do is I create a freeze frame. The motion file is only 5 seconds long, and the reason for that is it's a smaller file, it's shorter time to export. So I create the shorter file, and then I create a freeze frame and just add that in here to create it, to extend the length of it. Okay? We're going to close that up. Now we got to get a little bit of background music in there. And I've already, I've chosen a song, and I've already timed it out and everything. It's over here on this other question. And I'm just going to copy that and go over to my new question. And then I'm going to just, you know, time it out here so that this fade starts right there. Okay, so now we're going to add a crossfade and a cross dissolve, and I do this as opposed to using keyframes. I put a little crossfade there, I put a 12 frame cross dissolve in, and a 1 second cross dissolve out, and then a crossfade over here as well. Okay, and the way that I've done the music is I do use a keyframe in the music. I started at a -36 dB and I move it up to about -12, and I want to keep it at a low range. I don't want it really high. And I do the same thing on the way out, and I also have the crossfades, and it just gives it a nice slow fade out. Okay, and now we'll just test it and see how it looks.
Customers. Take a few moments to brainstorm.
What would you have to do to serve a higher aspiration, ambition, or aesthetic in your marketplace that would create more value?
Question. Will you go do those things?
I think I will go do those things. If you've enjoyed this tutorial, if it's been helpful, please come back and check out more. Like the video, subscribe to my channel, and I hope to see you in the future. Thanks.